The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content and explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
The house at the end of the dirt road, where disembodied voices whisper and strange sounds make the living shiver.
Where shadows lurk at the edge of the woods, just outside your back door. And mysterious lights speed beyond reason across the clear night sky.
Odd events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander, all you fellow wanderers. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everybody.
Well, before we get into tonight's stories, we're going to have to do some housekeeping because it's been quite a while.
It has been.
So, the holidays are coming up.
It's getting colder out.
Yeah, and if you're looking to get something for your loved ones for Christmas, or even an upcoming birthday, and they're a listener, well, we've got all kinds of cool stuff that we put in our TeePublic store. And if you're interested and want to know more about our items, you can head right on over to our website at whereourmindswander.com, and you can hit the TeePublic link. Or you can head to TeePublic and just put in Where Our Minds Wander podcast, and our TeePublic store should come up. Or there's another way you can do it. It's right down below our show notes. There's a long list of all our links, from Facebook to Instagram and TeePublic's in there.
Yeah, and we have all kinds of cool stuff. I mean, Wes didn't mention what we have, but we've got tote bags and pillows and hoodies and coffee mugs and everything you could possibly imagine.
For everyone, even for your kids.
And it's a great way to support our show.
That it is. And I have to say, we really enjoy the tote bags. We personally use them. Of course, we had to buy our own off from TeePublic, so I would wait till everything goes on sale to make a purchase, to be honest with you, is all. But the tote bags are really nice. They're heavy duty, very well made, and the graphics on them are beautiful.
They are. They're great for shopping, especially for buying books.
They are excellent book bags.
They are. And if you like to read, we have some books too, which you can also get on our website, whereourmindswander.com.
Yeah, there's links to our Amazon store where Beth's books are up there, and our Where Our Minds Wander podcast book.
The 13 Creepy Urban Legends.
Yeah, it's a really good book to sit down with your family, your young ones, and read them some stories.
That are guaranteed to keep them up all night.
Right. Well, spooky season's coming up, right?
That's true.
It's starting.
Yes, it is.
And finally, if you haven't already, check out our premium bonus episodes. They're available for $3 a piece. They're definitely worth a listen.
And you're not locked into anything. You can buy just one.
Right. So you don't have to feel like you have to do a monthly subscription. You can just purchase one, and if you like them, keep on going.
Yes.
But they're a little bit different than our regular episodes in a way that we're a little bit more laid back, I would say.
We don't worry as much about audiences of all ages with our bonus episodes. We're more adult-oriented with those.
Right. That's why they're behind a paywall. We can be a little bit more laid back and really not worry about what we say too much.
Right. So they're worth a listen.
They definitely are.
And speaking of listening, do you think that's enough? And I should start?
Yeah. But like I said, we hadn't done it in quite a while. So we do have to put it out there once in a while. We try to spare you all from it, but
we got to make money somehow.
Besides our regular jobs.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to have a little bit supporting the podcast to help pay for our subscriptions and some of our studio cost. And with that said, I know Beth's having some issues tonight with her voice. She's been coughing a lot.
Well, it's ever since after dinner when I somehow choked myself on my own spit.
That's lovely.
I don't know how I did it, but it's been bothering me ever since.
It's as bad as last night when I was going into the fridge to get a drink of water, and I coughed at the exact same time I went to swallow the water, and I ended up with heartburn, of all things, and choking, and water coming out my nose.
We're quite the pair.
We are. I don't know what's going on, but lately these allergies have been awful too.
Yeah.
You know, we get in the studio and next thing I know, I'm sneezing and coughing, and makes it kind of hard to record at times, doesn't it? But we always get through it.
I was going to say, we power through.
We will not miss an episode, regardless if we're sick or hungover.
The show must go on.
It must. So that said, Beth's going to start us off tonight.
I am. I'm going to talk about a statue. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm all ears.
All right. So there's a statue in the Batavia Cemetery in Batavia, New York, that has been there since 1882. This statue honors William Morgan, a man who isn't even buried there. Now, before I get into the convoluted and mysterious story of William Morgan, I want to read the inscription that's on the base of the statue. It says, "Sacred to the memory of William Morgan, a native of Virginia, a captain in the War of 1812, a respectable citizen of Batavia, and a martyr to the freedom of writing, printing, and speaking the truth. He was abducted from near this spot in the year 1826 by Freemasons and murdered for revealing the secrets of their order. The court records of Genesee County and the files of the Batavia Advocate, kept in the recorder's office, contain the history of the events that caused the erection of this monument."
There's an erection on the monument?
The erection of the monument. The putting up of the monument.
Oh.
That's a long inscription.
That it is.
Right? For the base of a monument.
Well, either it's written in very small print, or it's a big base.
Right. So the story of William Morgan is both confusing and confounding, since it involves a lot of gaps in historical records, a secret society, a documented disappearance, an alleged murder, and a backlash and political movement that almost ended the Freemasons. To begin with, there was a man named Miller, a man named Green, and William Morgan himself. But out of all the things that have been said about William Morgan, there's very little that anyone can state as fact. He was born in Culpeper, Virginia, sometime in the year 1774. His exact birth date is unknown. As a young man, he was a stone cutter and a bricklayer, and at one point he opened his own store in Richmond. He liked to tell people that he was a captain during the War of 1812 and had served with distinction. However, no military records have turned up for a captain with his name from Virginia, or any other indication that he actually fought in the war.
Uh-oh, a little bit of stolen valor there.
Possibly. When Morgan was in his mid-40s, he married 19-year-old Lucinda Pendleton. The couple had 2 children, a daughter whom they named Lucinda Wesley Morgan, and a son, Thomas Jefferson Morgan. In 1821, Morgan moved his family to York in Upper Canada, where he opened a brewery. He allegedly became a Freemason, joining the Masonic order. But when his brewery burned down soon after, Morgan found himself completely broke. The Morgan family returned to the U.S., first to Richmond, New York, and then to Batavia, where Morgan went back to bricklaying and stone cutting. He did attend a few lodge meetings in Rochester, and in 1825 he received the Royal Arch degree, after claiming he had received the 6 degrees in Canada. But local historians described him as a heavy drinker and a gambler. And the Freemasons in Batavia questioned whether Morgan had received the 6 degrees in Canada at all, or if he had even been accepted into a lodge there. They certainly weren't going to welcome him into any lodges in Batavia, even though he kept trying. After a while, Morgan even tried to open his own Freemason lodge, but he was quickly thwarted. Outraged by his treatment, Morgan then announced that he was going to publish a tell-all book that revealed all of the Freemason secrets, in detail. Now, just to give you a little context, the Freemasons had been around for a very long time. Most of our founding fathers, including 9 signers of the Declaration of Independence and 13 signers of the Constitution, were Freemasons. George Washington, Paul Revere, Benjamin Franklin, all Freemasons. The cornerstone of the U.S. Capitol building was laid by George Washington during a Masonic ceremony in which he wore a Masonic robe. When he was inaugurated as the country's first president, he swore on a Masonic Bible. Benjamin Franklin defended the secret society by basically saying that the creators of the United States deserved a secret society to go hang out with and share ideas with, where everyone could be trusted. They weren't doing anything wrong. They were just a club that hung out and talked about stuff. Considering that meeting in private was considered illegal by King George for all those years leading up to the Declaration of Independence, it's not hard to see how secret societies formed. Morgan wanted to prove that there were strange rituals, unsavory business deals, and very secret goings-on that only the rich and powerful were privy to. And it is true that Freemasonry had changed a lot from pre-Revolution days to post-Declaration of Independence days, especially with the introduction of Thomas Smith Webb. According to Smithsonian Magazine, Webb, who was a bookbinder, rose through the ranks of New England society, and when he joined the Freemasons, he formalized a series of rituals to be used by the organization. He felt that rituals brought men together, and the more elaborate the rituals were, the more they would bond those who performed them. The Royal Arch ritual, which Morgan claimed he performed in Rochester, involved being shoved around by other members while they beat on pots and pans. The Knights Templar ritual, which Morgan didn't perform, involved drinking wine from a human skull. Now, I'm not giving any secrets away by telling you this. Webb actually published them in a handbook in 1797 that sold 16,000 copies. So, secret, but not so secret. So, next to enter our story is Samuel D. Green. Green came to Batavia in order to open a tavern. He quickly realized, according to the Smithsonian article, that both his doctor and his deacon were Freemasons, so he decided he wanted to be part of it too. He was invited to join and found William Morgan to be a willing and enthusiastic peer who instructed him in several rites while Green was preparing to take his oath. But then in the fall of 1826, things got a little weird. Morgan was going around saying he was going to publish all of their secrets, and lodge members began talking about the, quote, wicked and perjured wretch. But the ideas they bounced around for silencing Morgan were pretty vague, and no one really seemed like they were going to follow through with anything. Meanwhile, Morgan had found himself a willing publisher, a man named David Cade Miller. Miller may or may not have received the first degree of masonry, but he was also barred from moving any further by the Batavia Lodge. So he had a little axe to grind, too. Miller agreed to publish Morgan's tell-all book for a fourth of the profits. And this is when the Masons took action. First, they tried harassing Miller through various litigations against his printing business. When that didn't work, they arrested Morgan on Saturday, August 19th, on charges that he had stolen a shirt and a tie. These false charges kept him in jail until the following Monday. During his incarceration, his home was ransacked. Neither of these things slowed Morgan down. So then Miller's printing office caught on fire. The following day, Morgan was arrested again, this time for a supposed $2 debt. He was transported 45 miles to Canandaigua, where he spent the night in a jail cell. The following morning, a stranger came to pay his bail, and although he was grateful at being released, he couldn't help but feel wary. Who was this guy, and why had he paid to free him? Well, it turns out this good Samaritan shoved Morgan into an awaiting carriage, which brought him to the abandoned Fort Niagara. Morgan was never seen again. So Green, the tavern owner, later wrote, quote, "These men who were the leaders in this plot against Morgan and Miller were men of standing and character. They were at the time holding the most important offices in church and state." End quote. The Masons who had allegedly brought down Morgan were judges and justices, sheriffs and constables, military officers of high standing, religious leaders, and politicians. Everything had been considered and determined upon by the very highest authorities in the Masonic councils. End quote.
Well, that's funny because the judge that built the house we live in was a Mason. And we know that there were some pretty influential people that came to this house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they all knew each other from the lodge.
Right.
Yes.
And it makes you wonder what conversations and what deals were made here.
Right. Well, 3 men named Lowton Lawson, Nicholas Cheesebro, and Edward Sawyer were convicted of kidnapping Morgan. They were the ones that said that they may have brought him to Fort Niagara. Several of the local Masons claimed that Morgan was simply brought to the Canadian border and told to never return to the United States. Another man, Elihu Mather, was brought in on charges of conspiracy to kidnap Morgan, but he was acquitted. Over the next several years, several Masons were brought up on charges. Some served time, like Sheriff Eli Bruce, and some did not. Green wrote that one of the brothers joked that, quote, "Morgan was taken out in a boat, a stone was fastened to him, and the wind blew, and the unfortunate wretch was blown overboard and sunk." End quote. But since there was no body and no one actually confessed to the murder, there was nothing Green or Miller could do. Ironically, Morgan's disappearance did exactly what he'd hoped that his book would do. It got people talking about the secret society and just what sorts of rituals were going on and what levels of power were wielded. Of course, it helped that Miller went ahead and published the book, too. He was very careful not to say that Morgan had been murdered, only that he had been, quote, carried away. But the book exploded, and the backlash against the Freemasons was wicked. Groups calling themselves the Morgan Commission formed in order to investigate Morgan's disappearance themselves. But they claimed constant interference by members of the police force and public office who also happened to be Masons. Green began speaking out publicly about their power and influence. Newspapers picked up the stories. And in 1828, citizens of Leroy, New York, published their Declaration of Independence from the Masonic institution. The anti-Masonic movement became so huge that they actually became a third political party. They even had their own presidential candidate, William Wirt, in 1832. He only got 8% of the vote, but all 7 of Vermont's electoral votes. So this was a pretty big deal. And Masonic membership across the country dropped by half. Within weeks of Morgan's disappearance, though, rumors flew. One popular one was that Morgan had run away to the Cayman Islands, where he was hanged for being a pirate. In October of 1827, a body washed up on the banks of Lake Ontario. Timothy Monroe's wife came to see the body and positively identified the clothing worn by the deceased as those belonging to her husband. He was a fisherman and had disappeared in a recent storm. At first, no one questioned that it might be Morgan, but eventually word got around, and despite the poor woman's insistence that it was her husband, Timothy, the body was claimed as Morgan and buried as Morgan. Then, in June of 1881, a grave was discovered in a quarry in Pembroke, New York. The Pembroke skeleton, which was really only a few bones and a metal tobacco box, included a ring with the initials WM. Supporters cried that this was Morgan's true remains. Detractors said it was merely a publicity stunt to bring in monetary donations for the proposed statue honoring Morgan that was planned for the Batavia Cemetery. The statue, as I said, was erected in 1882. In February of 2025, forensic anthropologist Dr. Ann Wester Bunch published a book on William Morgan, titled The William Morgan Affair, Masonic Mystery in Upstate New York.
Yeah, it's not upstate New York, though. We're true upstate New York.
Well, yeah, we are, but...
I love it when they say, oh, Albany, upstate New York. Really?
I know, but...
We're upstate New York. We're near the border.
I know.
Of Canada. Why can't they just get this right? Any of these people. I'm tired of saying upstate New York when it's nowhere near us. It's like middle New York.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done. Sorry for the rant, everyone.
In her book, Dr. Bunch explores 17 different hypotheses for what actually happened to William Morgan, all of which have some merit and many holes. And that's the thing. No one really knows what happened to William Morgan, at least not anymore. Was he really murdered because he threatened a powerful society? Or was it all trumped up half-truths, spearheaded by a man who felt snubbed by his perceived peers? There's absolutely no way to know. But as an aside, I thought this was kind of interesting. Remember I had said that Morgan married a girl who was a good 20 years younger than him?
Yeah.
Well, after his disappearance, Lucinda Pendleton Morgan married a man named George W. Harris, who was also 20 years older than her. The two of them went out to the Midwest, where Lucinda allegedly became a sister wife of Joseph Smith, the founder of Latter-day Saints. When Smith was murdered in 1844, so that's her second murdered husband,
Right.
Lucinda was sealed to him for eternity in a rite of the church. Then she separated from Harris, who I guess she was still legally married to, and got a job at the Lee Asylum in Memphis, Tennessee, after joining the Catholic Sisters of Charity. In 1841, William Morgan was posthumously baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Interesting.
Isn't that weird?
It really is.
I thought that woman has been in all different types of organizations that,
Yeah.
Interesting. We'll be right back after this quick break. Hey, did you know? In 1774, a Swiss watchmaker named Pierre Jacques Draws introduced a 2-foot-tall doll named the Writing Boy. With his curly brown hair, red velvet coat, and frilled shirt, the adorable Writing Boy sat at a desk. But this wasn't your normal fancy doll. Inside its body were 6,000 mechanical parts that meant the Writing Boy could actually dip a quill pen in ink and write complete sentences up to 40 characters long. His eyes even followed the words as he wrote, and he delicately shook excess ink from the quill so that it never smudged. King Louis XVI was in complete awe of the toy, which was really one of the earliest forms of robotics ever invented. Today, the 251-year-old automaton is on display with 2 others in a museum in Switzerland. And yes, it still works. Who'da thunk it?
All right, we're back. And for my story tonight, I want to share a few short tales with all of you fellow wanderers about a few of Ireland's greatest families. Now, bear in mind that legends say that all these stories are true. In 1830, the very wealthy John Dawson Duckett decided that his family home in Ireland, which was built in 1745, needed some renovations. He decided that adding turrets, towers, and arches to make it more castle-like was exactly what he wanted. Maybe it had something to do with him being related to William the Conqueror and King Edward I. The new house, which sat on 12,000 acres, was known as Duckett's Grove. The last of the Ducketts, William, was said to have had an affair with a very beautiful but very young girl. While this girl was out riding one day on the estate, she was thrown from the horse and killed. Her grief-stricken mother placed a curse on the Duckett family, wishing them death, despair, and financial ruin. Now, it didn't take long for the curse to go into effect. One night, while a lady was visiting the Duckett family, she heard the most awful wailing sound from outside. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't a human. It was something else entirely. It was a banshee. This lady was found dead the following morning. Legend says that not long after, the estate's gardener heard the same terrible sound, a long, keening wail that echoed across the grounds. His mother died before sunrise. William himself died in 1908, and his second wife, Marie, died in 1916. But the curse lived on, and the banshee continued to get her revenge. Some say that she caused the fire in 1933 that burned Duckett's Grove to the ground, leaving nothing but a shell of the former house. Shane's Castle, which sits on the shores of Lough Neagh in County Antrim, has been in the O'Neill family since 1345. According to Ireland.com, Kathleen O'Neill was taken by the fairies and cursed for eternity to wander the earth as a harbinger of death. The O'Neill family believed that Kathleen had become a banshee, and each time her wailing cry was heard across the grounds and in the castle itself, another member of the family would die. The family was so afraid of the banshee that they set aside one room in the castle just for her. No one else could enter the room. Perhaps if she had a space to herself and felt respected, she would stop her horrible wailing. According to spiritedisle.ie, on May 14, 1816, the O'Neills held one of their lavish parties. But this party was so huge that they ended up not having enough rooms for all of their guests. Rather than turning anyone away, the Earl decided that it would be okay if the Banshee's room was used for just one night. It proved to be a horrible mistake. In the middle of the party, a terrible keening filled the banquet hall. The wail rose louder and louder, and the flames erupted. Some of the terrified guests shouted that they could see a figure standing in the middle of them. By morning, Shane's Castle was in ruins. In 1642, Lady Fanshawe was spending the night at Bunratty Castle in County Clare, Ireland, as a guest of the O'Brien family. According to greatcastles.com, a castle has stood on that very spot since the year 1250. The first stone version was built sometime between then and 1318, when it was burned to the ground by a grieving widow. In 1475, the O'Brien clan took control of the rebuilt castle. But on this evening, in 1642, Lady Fanshawe was fast asleep in one of the castle's upper-story bedroom chambers. Something, most likely a noise, woke her. As she listened in the dark, she could make out some sort of wailing sound coming from outside her window. Curious, but also scared, she got out of bed and stepped up to the window to look out. Floating above the river, at eye level with her, was a pale woman with long red hair. Lady Fanshawe ran back to her bed and hid under the covers, frightened for her life. The red-haired figure continued to moan in total despair until at last the sun rose. The following day, when she told the O'Brien family about her terrifying night, they looked at each other in alarm. They knew all about the red-headed banshee. She was once a living servant girl who had drowned in the river. Now, she only appeared to the family and cried her terrible cry when another one of the family members was about to die. Later that day, one of them did. And lastly, there's the Banshee of Mulladuff. Off the coast of Ireland, in County Donegal, lie some treacherous rocks. Legend says that one day a young sailor kissed his bride goodbye and set off into the crashing waves. When he didn't return, his heartbroken bride walked the shores of Mulladuff, screaming and crying into the wind, all day and all night. Hoping to give her some relief, a local priest offered her a blessing to ease her torment and grief. The poor lady agreed to go home, but she died in the night. Many said it was because of a broken heart, but afraid that her spirit would become a banshee, the townsfolk buried her under a rock, hoping its weight would pin her soul to the earth. It didn't work, of course, and the Banshee of Mulladuff can still be heard warning people that death is coming. In Irish folktale, there are several families that are said to have a banshee attached to them, including the O'Neills, the O'Briens, and the Ducketts, like I've mentioned, but also the O'Connors, the O'Gradys, and the Kavanaghs.
The Kavanaughs?
Yes, the Kavanaghs.
Well, then, there are some Kavanaughs in my family.
This I know.
Aha! I did not know that the Kavanaughs were attached to a Banshee story.
Well, there are. And I found a Banshee story just for you.
Oh, great.
According to sacredtext.com, there was once a Reverend Charles Bunworth in County Cork who was beloved by his parishioners. He was said to have been an excellent Irish harp player, and he often welcomed traveling harpists into his home. The Reverend had been feeling rather poorly in recent weeks, but after taking some medicine, he seemed to be doing much better. The family just happened to be waiting for a herdsman named Kavanagh to arrive with a refill of the medicine when they heard what sounded like a bunch of sheep being sheared just outside their home. They thought it strange, especially when they didn't see anything that would have caused the noise. Later that evening, around 11 p.m., Kavanagh finally arrived. He seemed rather agitated, and when Miss Bunworth, one of the Reverend's 2 daughters, asked him what was wrong, the man broke down into tears, saying that he feared the good Reverend was going to die very soon. Miss Bunworth accused Kavanagh of being drunk and scolded him for it. What if he had fallen and broken the medicine that her father much desperately needed? Kavanagh insisted that the Reverend was sure to die, because a banshee had followed him for many, many miles, clapping her hands and screeching. As if her keening wail wasn't bad enough, she kept saying the Reverend's name over and over as she followed him through village after village on his journey home. She didn't stop until he reached the abbey. That's when she sat down on the ground under a tree that had recently been struck by lightning and pulled her long cloak around her body. She continued to keen as she rocked back and forth. Miss Bunworth laughed at the herdsman's story and assured him that her father was actually doing quite well. She had no concerns for his immediate demise. A week passed, and without warning, the Reverend's health began to steadily decline. Miss Bunworth, her sister, and a kind neighbor sat vigil at the man's bedside, caring for him as best as they could. And then, one night, there was a knock against the parlor window, and suddenly a horrible low moan filled the air, as if a woman just stood on the other side of the glass, pressing her mouth against it and keening with all her might. They could hear the sound of someone clapping their hands as well. Well, the 2 sisters went outside immediately to catch whoever was playing such a terrible trick. They searched all around the house and even most of the way down the road. They didn't see or hear anything. But when they returned to the house, the kind neighbor said she had continued to hear the banshee wailing the entire time. As the sun rose the following day, Reverend Bunworth took his final breath. It was said that people came from far and wide to leave beautiful harps in memory of the Reverend. 15 of them, in fact.
Huh.
So, what exactly is a banshee? And can a banshee come after anyone?
I don't know. Hopefully you're going to tell us.
Well, of course I am. There are hundreds of banshee stories, from as far back as the year 1380, and most of them are tied directly to the major clans of Ireland. But there are banshee stories in Scotland and Wales also. Essentially, the word banshee means a woman of the fairy mound, because she is believed to live within the many small burial mounds throughout Ireland. She's also been called the Hag of the Mist, Little Washerwoman, and Hag of the Black Head. People call her the Little Washerwoman because she was frequently seen washing blood from the clothes belonging to the people who were about to die. But regardless of what name people call her, she's a spirit that warns of impending death. Some tales say that in life, she was a woman who died in childbirth, or the victim of murder, and then was taken by the fairies to roam the earth as a spirit. IrishMyths.com says that the Banshee might originate with the goddess Brigid. When her son died in battle, she lamented his death by singing a high-pitched, nasally voice called keening, broken up by bouts of weeping. In fact, forms of keening are practiced in cultures all over the world. But as far as what a banshee looks like, well, there are as many variations of that as there are stories. According to IrishPost.com, a banshee typically can take 3 different forms: a young maiden, a full-figured matron, or a bent and wretched old crone. When she's seen in a young maiden's form, she often lures people towards her with her beautiful singing, similar to a mermaid or siren. That's why she's often tied to musicians like Reverend Bunworth. She also might resemble a young girl that the family actually knows and has recently lost. She often has long flowing hair, although sometimes it's red and sometimes it's black. Oftentimes, she's heard wailing as she combs her long, beautiful hair. Her eyes are typically red because of her constant crying. She is usually dressed in either a green or white dress and a gray cloak. As for her height, it ranges from very short, only a foot tall, to unnaturally tall, towering over a grown man. Generally, the younger she appears, the taller she is. Some tales say that she actually grows in height with each new soul she dooms. When she's seen in her old crone or old hag face, she's typically bent over and shorter. The old hag version also has rotten teeth and long fingernails. Her eyes are so hateful that just looking into them can kill you.
I don't know which version I'd rather run into if I had a choice.
Well, I think if I had my choice, I'm going to go with a younger version.
Because
at least I'll die with a smile on my face that it's a younger, beautiful woman than some old hag with long fingernails and rotten teeth coming at me.
Okay, fair enough.
IrishPost.com mentions that throughout history, soldiers would abandon a fight if they heard wailing in the woods right beforehand. They knew the banshee was warning them of their impending doom, and they'd rather flee than die in battle. This didn't generally save them, though, because they'd usually end up getting killed anyway, or being put to death for desertion. So in the end, the banshee was right. Other tales say that if a family heard a banshee's crying, it might mean that a family member had died far from home, and she was simply letting them know. She's also been tied to the death coach, a black carriage driven by a headless horseman, another harbinger of death. In most cases, the banshee is alerting people to either the recent death of a loved one or the impending death of a loved one. But there are some exceptions where the banshee actually uses her high-pitched wailing to drive someone to either insanity or taking their own life. At times, her keening or wailing can be so high-pitched that it actually shatters glass or shreds human flesh.
Jeez Louise.
I know. She's nothing you want to mess with.
No.
So, do you have to worry about a banshee? Probably not, unless you're related to one of the major clans of Ireland. Legend has it that the 5 clans I mentioned earlier were directly responsible for the annihilation of the old gods and goddesses, including Brigid, and that the Banshees are part of Brigid's revenge against them. However, there have been exceptions, so perhaps no one is truly safe.
Oh, great. At least I'm related to the Kavanaughs by marriage and not a direct descendant of any Kavanaughs.
Well, perhaps so. But I would imagine even being related to one of them is enough.
Through marriage?
Right.
Like 3 times removed?
Doesn't really matter. Your name's in there.
Nice.
The Banshee would know about it.
Well, she'd know about you now, too, wouldn't she?
How is that?
Well, it's not any more closely tied than I am.
Yeah, but I'm telling her story. You think she'd, have a little mercy on me. I'm actually trying to help the Banshee out here by letting people know she can be bad, but hey,
She deserves love, too.
Exactly.
Well, that's pretty cool. I didn't know some of those tales, so.
If I see a Banshee, I'm just going to suck up to her and tell her how pretty she is.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
That's what you're going to do.
Yeah. Make her a nice home-cooked meal.
Give her a room in the house just for her.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
I'm going to be alive after.
What about the rest of us?
Every man for themselves, dear.
Nice.
I'm not ready to go just yet. And not by a Banshee.
Right. But, it is interesting. You had mentioned earlier that keening is part of grieving in all different cultures. And it really is. I mean, indigenous people in this country did keening, and they do in other countries too that I can think of. So it's a widespread practice. So I'm surprised that there aren't more banshees in other cultures. Although there probably are versions of banshees in other cultures. They just don't call them banshees.
Exactly. And that's something more to delve further into.
There always is. More and more.
You're always going to go down the rabbit hole. No matter what research you do on one topic, it leads you somewhere else. It's inevitable.
The Stuck in the Middle with You song?
Mm-hmm.
I'm stuck in the rabbit hole with you. And that's all right.
Yeah, you're truly a lucky girl.
Well, unless the Banshee comes around and then I'm SOL.
Yeah, that you are. All right. As always, if you want to know more about tonight's stories, check out our sources in our show notes.
Yes, there are a lot of them, as always.
And with that said, as always, thank you for joining us. And we'll see you all next week with an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.
See you soon. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to traveling with you again to the places where our minds wander.
If you like what you heard, please take a moment and provide us with a 5-star rating and a comment on your favorite listening platform. It really helps us move up the list and become more visible on the podcast charts so new people can find us.
And thank you all for your continued support.
See you next week for an all-new episode.